Like it's What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Frank After 40. Lance, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, buddy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in case anybody's wondering, Lance says his last name, Lance Cayko. So I just want to make sure we got that correct before we got the podcast started.
Yeah, of course you have to, right? Everybody, yeah. Look, Frank leaned into the way I use it, which is like an icebreaker. It's totally something to embrace. It took my kids almost until they were 20 to finally go, "You're right, Dad. Like we should use this as an icebreaker, and nobody forgets our name." And then they leaned into it and they love it, but they hated it at first.
Yeah, I've been thinking in the last 5 minutes how would I have ever come up with that pronunciation, and I could find Seiko, and I think I said Cayko, or you could say Cayko, but I would never have thought, because you think of PS, silent P, and all that stuff. But that's interesting.
Yep.
Anyway, what nationality is that? Can I ask? Let's hear it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's originally Czechoslovakian.
Oh.
Like Eastern Bloc, basically. Yeah. And when 4 or 5 generations ago came over on the boat, they tried to Americanize it. It used to be Chudayko, so it was a very Eastern Bloc name, is Chudayko.
Yeah.
And then they thought, the American version should be Psycho. And we're like, wow.
Make that quick transition there. Oh my goodness, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited today to get into some stuff that you're involved in, some stuff that I'm involved in, and get your take and your opinion. Looks like we're going to have to talk fishing, so that'll be fun.
Cool.
But yeah, so for everybody who doesn't know you, I do like to touch on early years. It's always been something that I've done on this show. But before we get into that, tell everybody a little bit about what you do and who you are so that they understand where we're going.
Yeah, I'll start from the top. Like if anybody went and looked me up on LinkedIn, I'm the only one that spells my name that way, right? So I'm like, if you found me, you'd be like, he has got a moniker of serial entrepreneur, architect, builder, and then my preferred pronouns are positive reactionary. Yeah. Okay. So that's the quickest way to describe what I do. And then there's a few other things that I still do too, which is like the fishing. I have a YouTube channel, a Newsbreak channel, and we get paid with sponsorships, and people send us free stuff, and it's pretty cool. It's Fishing with Lance, and I started that about 4 or 5 years ago. I had to take a big break from even fishing and anything like that, because at one point it was just like I had 4 children. They were all little. You'd take them out, but not in the kind of way I wanted to, and stuff like that. I also teach sometimes at 2 different universities. So I'm an adjunct professor at North Dakota State University, Colorado Boulder, and then a philanthropist too. I have a nonprofit, and I'm very proud of it. It's so much work, but it's so worth it. It's Longmont Community Gardens, and it's we just expanded and doubled the size of our gardening opportunities this last year after winning a $86,000 federal grant from the USDA to do that in the city that I live in, which is Longmont, Colorado. So I do a lot of stuff, but I've somehow find time and then podcasting. We have a podcast too, Inside the Firm podcast, and I do guesting on shows like yours too to just help spread the message about everything that we do. I felt like at the age of 40, I'd finally become a real adult, and I had positive things to share with folks, and I just like to put that energy out in the universe.
I love that. I love it. I love that you stay busy. We're a little the same that way, so that's pretty cool. So I have so many questions on everything you just said, actually, but let's kind of take the traditional route that we do here. Tell me a little bit about where you grew up, how you grew up. I'm just interested to know. Was it anywhere near where you are now? What was family life like? Just before we get into current days.
Yeah. I'm 42. When I was 13, I decided farming with my dad wasn't for me. And I grew up in northwest North Dakota in between a cattle ranch and a sugar beet farm. So I tried irrigating these sugar beets with Dad. We were super poor farmers. We didn't have all of the fancy automatic sprinklers for our farm. So we had to do everything by hand. And we had to carry around these big tubes, and we'd make our own ditches and dams and stuff like that. It was very labor intense. You were working 24 hours around the clock. You'd get little naps here and there. And I didn't get along with my dad too well at that point in my life. Lasted about a week, and I was like, this is just not what I'm interested in. Like, this is not the path for me, and I could just feel it. And so I preemptively got like a replacement for myself, which was my best friend Chris. He was like willing to do whatever, and I was just not. And I said, hey, this is not for me, Dad. I'm gonna call your best friend up. His name is Bruce, and he was a general contractor, and I'd always been interested in building, making things. I was a Lego kid growing up. I was always sketching. I tried to, like, I took shop classes, and when I called Bruce, I said, hey, what do you got going on this summer? Like, I would love to just do whatever. I'll pick up garbage. And he goes, you can be my gopher. I'll pay $7.25 an hour. And I was like, cool. What's a gopher? And he goes, well, when you go for, you're going to go for all the things. You're going to go for this, go for that. When you're done going for the things, then you can get up on the roof and learn how to do what we do. I was the best gopher you ever had, because that's all I needed to hear. I was like, oh, I want to learn how to like roof. Like, I want a skill. Like, this is very appealing to me. So I was on the roof a lot. I learned how to do the whole process. We would wake up super early, 5, 6, have half the roof torn off by 10 a.m. Or we'd have the whole roof torn off by 10, 11 a.m., put it back on by 2 or 3 p.m., get off the roof. I just completely fell in love with the whole industry. Like, all the guys, the catcalling, the typical construction stuff. Like, I just loved it. Bumming smokes from them as a kid, that kind of thing. And then about halfway through the summer, Bruce, I think, saw something in me that he just didn't see in the other guys. Because, the other guys were like, maybe they had substance issues. They're kind of a classic, like, grumpy construction worker sort of thing. Haggard is the way to describe them. And he just saw something different in me with the motivation, the willingness to learn, all that. And I was a hard worker. He pulls me aside over at lunch and he goes, I'm paying you $7.25 an hour. What do you think I'm paying? What do you think I'm charging the clients? And I go, $7.25 an hour. And he laughed and laughed. I think he knew that I was going to say that. And he goes, no, that's not how it works. And he goes, I'm charging them 3 to 4 times your labor. And I go, isn't that stealing? And he goes, no. And then he explained business to me. He explained how it works. He explained why you do that, all the profit, the overhead, the risk, the reward for being the entrepreneur, the fact that you're going to lose him money sometimes on jobs, all that stuff. And that was one of the biggest light bulbs I've ever had in my life, because that was the first real entrepreneur that I ever met. My mom and dad were not, God bless them. Like, they had to do what they had to do to make sure we were fed. We never went without wanting, generally. So it's food on the table, roof overhead, typical stuff. Mm-hmm. But that was the first real entrepreneur that I met. And I really started to notice the big difference between what the relationship that Bruce had with money versus the dad who raised me. And I didn't read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad until I was maybe mid-30s. But after I'd read that book and I started to look backwards in time, I went, oh my God, I had the Rich Dad, Poor Dad experience. Mm-hmm. No wonder why it formed me in the way I did. Like the author of that book, it's exactly why he is the way he is, because he had that experience and he went like, I never want to have this anxiety relationship towards money. And that's what my dad and mom had, who raised me. It wasn't that so much that we were poor, but it was definitely like, I remember one time I ran up a phone bill. Didn't mean to. I just didn't think it was long distance to get the internet, but it was apparently. It's like $1,000. You would have thought World War II, we were on the brink of nuclear war. I mean, it was just like, they were just so upset about it, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, let's say even with inflation, if one of my kids ran up a long distance bill, $4,000 or $5,000 today, I just write the check. Would I be mad at them? Yes. Would there be a lesson in them? Sure. But it wouldn't be this. It was like, again, nuclear war was happening. And then Bruce, it wasn't so much that he was rich with all of these objects. It was just, there was no anxiety about money. Mm-hmm. I was like, that's what I want. I want the freedom from money. So at the end of the summer, I asked Bruce. Bruce said, well, what do you want to do? And I go, how do I become you? Like, how do I become a general contractor? I go, this is very appealing to me. And he goes, oh, next summer you don't work for me. And then again, in hindsight, I'm like, man, as a literal general contractor now, an architect and all the other stuff that I do, employing people. I'm like, what a brave and mature thing to say as a guy. He's going to let his best guy go, essentially. One of the most potential. Maybe you could have even handed the baton to me at some point, me take ownership of I don't know.
Sure.
And he goes, go work for somebody. Every summer you need to go work for a different trade now. And you need to learn all this, because that's how you become a general. And I did. So that's what I did from then 13 to 21. As I would try to go and then even from like 18 to 20, I went to tech school, North Dakota State School of Science in Wapaton, building construction technology. They teach you how to be basically a class B general contractor. And then the second light bulb went off when I was would have been my last year there, last semester. We had to build a house. That was our capstone project with our team at North Dakota State School of Science. And I started looking at the blueprints, and this word architect popped into my head. And because it was the first time I was ever dealing with like real blueprints. And I went, oh yeah, the architect, I forgot about that. Huh. Well, if I became an architect first, I would actually get the client first, right? I could just turn it into a building client. I'm like, man, I could get paid 2 times. And then I went, oh yeah, I actually finally liked school. I was suddenly went from like a low B student in high school to a high A on the dean's list in tech school, because I was finally getting to do what I wanted to do.
Sure.
So I applied to North Dakota State, 70 miles north, got accepted, accelerated through there. And then the third big light bulb went off there is then this word developer popped up because that's how it works, is like you hear it often in architects. It's like, because that's who you're working with, a lot of real estate developers. And I went, wait a minute, developer, what's that? And they're like, oh, well, they're the ones who actually end up hiring everybody. Like they hire the architect, the builders, everybody. And I went, well, that's actually what I want to be. Like I should be all 3. So it took me a long time to get there, graduating in 2008, till when we bought our first piece of land in 2017, almost a decade. But we did do that. And the building I'm recording from right now is our commercial unit, which is part of a 3-plex, and then we have a 6-plex behind us, in which we retained 2 of those and then became real estate investors essentially. And I live in one of the units. But that's as terse of a story as I could give you from back then till now.
No, I love it. So let me ask you a question to jump off of the building piece for a second, because I find you were with your dad on the farm. Even though you went the building route, you now have a nonprofit that's tied with gardening. Do you think that has any ties back to when you were working with your dad, or is it completely unrelated?
It's actually more grandma. Grandma had the big garden.
Okay.
Dad is still a very, very avid gardener, but I could not. It's like I couldn't. You can't take you can take the kid out the farm, but you can't take the farm out the kid. It's exactly that. So I got to Colorado, and had to live in an apartment for like 5, 6, 7 years before we could afford to buy a house. And I just found myself with all this free time after grad school, going only having to work like 40-hour week. I'm like, instead of 80 to 100 in grad school, and went, yeah, I want to teach my kids how to grow stuff. Like that is very important to me from a health standpoint, outdoor standpoint, and then just teaching them and everything, and hopefully they'll carry on the baton. And one of my sons actually has. He's 2 of them actually. He's applying to all these garden jobs and everything. So it for sure, through proxy, a dad had a lot to do with that.
So I'm curious. You went and did all 3. Love it. What was the difference? So you get all these certifications, let's call it, or degrees, because you finished school, I'm guessing. What was the difference between getting the degree and then building a business that you have today, or turning it into an actual business that you have today? So you had to go and you had to find the client to be the architect for their plans, and then, build or be the developer. So walk me through that process of what you thought it was going to be like, what was it actually, and the process to get to where you are today.
I almost didn't even have time to think about it. That's what's crazy about it, because it was a push to shove.
Well, you said graduation in 2008, right?
Yeah.
That's when the GFC happened. So I'm interested to know also how that played a role in this story.
Yeah. And that's thank you. Yeah. So graduated in 2008, and my business partner and I, we're best friends in college. So we went separate ways. We knew we were going to go separate ways. He had the Big Apple on his brain. He's like, I got to go to New York. It's the mecca between it and Chicago. It's the mecca of architecture in the United States, right?
Gotcha.
And I was like, I'm a mountain guy. Like I need my outdoors. Like I grew up summering in Western North Dakota, grew up in, every summer we'd go to like Idaho, Montana. I just had my heart set on it. Plus I had a wife and a child and another one on the way. And I was like, I'm not raising them in Manhattan. Like that ain't, that ain't, even if we could afford it, I'm like, not happening. So we both got internships, and we think they were probably one of the last ones in each respective place we ended up. I ended up in Boulder, Colorado. He ended up in New York City. And then we both got laid off. He got laid off first. He actually watched Manhattan. He watched from a high rise in Manhattan. He watched Wall Street meltdown. Watched the guys come out of the Wall Street building, the trading center, with all the stuff. And I mean, it was shocking, right? He's texting me all this, and I still haven't lost my job yet. He's all, dejected, sad, or everything. Tried to find some other internships, couldn't do it. Decided he was going to. He decided in his head, well, I'm going to go back to school for another master's construction management at North Dakota State. Maybe this recession will only be a year. Then I get laid off. And I knew the layoff was coming because of that, and you could just see the writing on the wall. And I always paid attention to the markets and stuff. But I was working on getting some work lined up, knowing like I'm not going back to North Dakota. Like we love Colorado, right? The weather, everything. And so I put out Craigslist ads of all things. And I fell back on my handyman work. Thank God. Thank God I had that backbone. And I just tried to be the opposite. And that's where I was like the positive reactionary, sort of punny preferred pronouns come into play, is like every time that something negative happens to me, it took me about 40 years to figure this out and put a name to it. And it's like, oh, I'm experiencing the law of polarity. Something bad happens. Something good is going to happen. Has to. Can't have negative, can't have positive. You can't have one mutually exclusive. Like you can't have electricity if there's not negative and positive. Like it's an actual law of physics how it works, right? So I always tried to be this positive reactionary to like negative that I would saw. And one of the first ways it happened was with that Craigslist ad. Is like I was like, oh, who are my competitors? Who am I competing against here? And it was just old curmudgeon-y, kind of like those guys I was describing earlier. And I was like, I'm the opposite, right? I was like, I would put on the Craigslist ad, tall, handsome, 6'1", sober, master's degree. Like I was like, I know who I'm going to appeal to. It's going to be like a housewife or somebody like that, somebody who just wants pleasant to come into their house. And sure enough, I just had so much work lined up. I was able to work for cash for like 3 or 4 months. Did not have to take out any unemployment insurance after I got laid off. And then I had also been doing all of this modeling online, not like in front of a camera, but like CAD modeling. And I got the attention of this CFO of Turbo Squid, where I was putting all these like furniture models. She was like, hey, you're uploading more than anybody in the whole world right now. And I told her about my ambitions to do even more. And she was like, oh my gosh. She's like, well, we have these big manufacturers coming online. They need to start making the transition from 2D CAD details over to these 3D BIM models. Would you be interested? And I go 100%. So while I did all the handyman work, I kept on working in that capacity, keeping in touch, networking, and eventually landed the work. And that work ended up being a solid base for us to hang our shingle on for about the first 3 or 4 years. We were mostly doing that while we then started to, again, use Craigslist and these other guerrilla marketing strategies that all these other architects were not doing. They were just completely overlooking it. And we started marketing just the opposite. It was actually like, that was probably the most shocking part for me to answer this question, is like, it was just a surprise that I was like, oh, wow. Thank God these architects are so bad at business, and they still are. And that's actually why we ended up forming the show. Is one of the primary reasons of Inside the Firm podcast was like, we made it to year 7 of F9. Most businesses fail within the first 7. We got to year 7 and went, we are here. Oh my God. Like this could maybe keep going. We beat the odds so far. We should tell our story, because I just get so sick of the media beating down like Gen Z, millennials, even some of Gen X, of like victimhood culture and the American dream is dead and entrepreneurship is dead. And it's like, I want as many entrepreneurs out there in society as we can get, because those people are the ones with the most skin in the game. They're they can make the most change through the private sector. And yeah, that's I think the way I would try to answer that question. It was just a big surprise.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hear that story and I take away activity breeds activity.
Mm.
And even though, yes, it was a little bit of good fortune for you, the only reason that good fortune came to you is because you were doing the work to advertise and put yourself out there. And so kudos to you. That's what I think. And so it's like, it's a little bit of both. But that's awesome. That's an awesome story. So tell me about F9. Tell me what you guys are doing today. And what do you think your business is built on? Is it mostly the architect piece? Is it all three equally? Building? What do you think you do all of, and what is it that you're building? That kind of, tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, so this would be our 15th year in existence. It's like, I'm like, finally the year 15 hit me. I'm like, whoa, we're kind of there.
Yeah.
As far as established goes. You Google Colorado architects, we're on the first page. We're punching right across to everybody else. As a matter of fact, we're punching right at one of the guys who laid me off, which is pretty amazing. We've grown from 2 to 9 architects. We're very happy with that size. We have 2 locations now, one in Longmont, one in Denver. We keep winning awards. And I would say, yes, architecture is, and us doing architecture is the base of what we do, because we're selective about who we'll build for. So and then it's a whole separate legal entity too. F14 Productions is our general contracting firm. We have 3 criteria that every architecture project we bring into the firm must meet in order for us to decide if we're going to build for a client. Number 1 is, like, we got to like them. We're going to extend that relationship for so long. And it kind of goes all the way back to that Lightbulb. As I was like, oh, I get to interview them first. Like, oh, wow, what other builder gets to interview a potential client in depth and seeing high and low buttons happen throughout the design process and really get a feel for the temperature. So they got to meet that. Second one is they got to be within about 30 to 45 minute radius of our Longmont office, because I got to be able to get the job sites. It's never shocking like the surprises you find out, right?
Yep.
And then the third one is they got to be cash financed, which is, I realize, is like, wow, Lance, you're really demanding that. It's like, I don't want to deal with a bank. I've dealt with a bank before as a developer, and I have built for other people who have the bank. And there are a lot of people who have the kind of cash that you need to get things done. And it just makes the process go so much smoother. It's just so much better. So that's, and then the real estate component, we did the one development. And then what I learned from the development, and we did it between 2017 and 2020, because that's how long it takes. The 1 year to design, 1 year for entitlements, 1 year to build, it's a long process. I got a little burnt out just in general. And I also hit 40 at that age, about 40. So I had my midlife crisis, and then COVID was there, and it was just like, no more developments for a while. And what I learned also is like, I really need to make sure I build up the construction firm and get more experience under our belt, just so the whole process goes smoother and better on the next one. And so that's where we're at right now. Is we're on year 6 of F14 being in its existence, and we're about to hit year 7. So we'll be out of the startup phase. We've ran a lot of experience through the experiments at F14, and I think we've learned some. And then once that happens, I think we're ready for our next development after that in the next maybe 3 to 5 years. And then we also want to change and pivot to different typologies. So, but the biggest thing though with that also is at the base of F9 is customer service, which is a 100% reaction again to all these other architects that think like, oh, I need to promote design first. Everybody wants to hire me because I'm a good designer. And it's like, nope, they want to hire you to solve their problems through high quality customer service. So that's what we put at the forefront of what we do. And that's why we have 87 5-star reviews on our Longmont location, 43 5-star reviews in our Denver location, where we've been the best of Mile High finalist 3 years in a row, winner of 2 for best in customer service in the whole state. And everything falls into place after that. Like, if we're doing the fundamental customer service right, the design's going to happen. That's what we're trained to do.
So let's go with that for a second, because a lot of the people that will listen to this are entrepreneurs. And I always like to find out from someone who's had success in business,
Mhm.
how much of your business comes from marketing. Obviously, it's word of mouth and you're giving good customer service. I love that. That's always should be the base. What else do you do? And what do you find typically works for you and in this current condition?
Yeah, as far as getting those first clients?
Yeah, like marketing. Like, what do you find works for you? Like people today with social media, and they're constantly
Oh,
doing. Some are doing
okay.
social media, some are doing Google advertising, some are
Yeah.
doing whatever. What do you find works for you besides good customer service?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked about social media, because we've tried that. We've tried the social media thing. We've prior to 3 years ago, the previous 3 years to that, um, we threw quite a bit of money at social media. We hired a social media manager, a firm even, and we were doing dual postings we were trying to establish ourselves as an authority with the podcast, and that has worked. But we would hit all the major platforms, and there was no return. There was almost no return. I mean, it was pretty obvious, right? And what we noticed is so then during that time, we didn't make enough cash to be able to hire a full-fledged marketing firm to redo the website, really focus on SEO, and get us up to that first page of Google when you search Colorado architects,
Mhm.
whatever. So, but I'm glad we went through that experiment of the social media, because for us, we realized that's not where you get the clients. That's more of just establishing identity and authority in space, making sure you're sort of top of mind.
Mhm.
But to even track the metrics of how it works, like for a service-based
Difficult.
business, yeah, especially architects, even the demographics of the people that are using the social media platforms, it's like objectively true that like most of the wealthy people actually stay the heck off of social media, because they're too busy doing all this stuff, right? Like even I do. I don't have any notifications on my phone with any of the apps. I only use it to just I check when I want to. Um, the biggest most recent media push and marketing that we've seen work for us is hiring somebody like Neil Patel. That's who our marketing firm is. Neil Patel agencies, like to put it in perspective, they do Tucker Carlson stuff. They
Gotcha.
do Target stuff. So that's like you're playing with the big boys, big girls at that point, and you even have to apply to become one of their clients. We've put a lot of money into the website and SEO in the past 3 years. And that's been the biggest dividend payer for sure. Because now I am getting multiple calls per day, while Al is at the same time getting multiple emails and contact there. And it's outward. But the biggest tweak compared to that you look at us compared to the other architects is we're not showcasing the portfolio when you go to our landing page. It's how can we solve your problems? Hey,
Mhm.
we're architects. We're here to solve your problems with whatever building or you're doing. And that's how we're showing it. It's not pretty pictures of here's the pretty buildings. That comes later. Sure, that's like a default again that I think people are doing. So for us, that's what we've honed in on. And we still do all the traditional stuff. We're still members of the Home Builders Association, so I go network with people. I still do traditional networking. I will reach out to realtors in the area. I go glad hand, all of that stuff. I'm podcast. This is networking. This is outward. It increases. People look up Lance. Oh my gosh, he's on all these podcasts and everything else. He seems like an authority in the space. I trust that guy. I hired that guy. But the social media, again, I'm not, I just can't be convinced of that one. I think for some people it works so good.
Mhm.
Because like the gal who just beat us for the best mile high, she's killing it. She runs everything off her Instagram, but we can't market in the way she does with that, because
Sure.
even the work she does is different. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Interesting though to know. Uh, Tell me about what you're teaching. What exactly are you teaching? You're doing a bunch of different things. How often you teach and what are you teaching?
yeah, I didn't teach last semester, which is the first time I hadn't taught a semester in 13 years.
Oh.
And it was just because they discontinued the course, and I think it's a lot of it had to do with the rise of AI.
Mhm. Gotcha.
and all of these other competing platforms that my former students, which the former class was, I was teaching the Adobe Creative Suite. So I was teaching Photoshop, Adobe
Mhm.
Premiere, the whole thing. And there's just so many competitors now. I think they're finding that, like, I'm not sure this is useful for our students.
Mhm.
And then prior to that, it was design studios.
Got
So I would go out and be teaching design studios to architecture and engineering
I
students
gotcha.
and infusing them with all of our practicing knowledge in the higher ed.
So I'm curious to ask your opinion on some things, some topics. So AI is really blowing up. Um, I'm interested to get your take, especially directly related to either architecture, building, and how you think that's going to be incorporated. And then I want to talk a little bit about green building and how much you deal with that much more out there than we do out here. I'm on the East Coast in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So I think in different areas of the country, it's probably bigger than in certain areas. But I'd love to talk a little bit about that too. But tell me about AI, and are you seeing that involved in your practice? Are you using it? Where do you think it's going? Just curious.
Yeah. Uh, 2-3 years ago, we had reached out to a coder because I had ChatGPT just came on the horizon. It was like, and I started playing with it, and I'm like, this is whoa.
Yeah.
And then after you play with it a while, you're like, it's still
Yeah.
not quite there. And then you move
Yeah.
up to the pro grade, whatever. But it sparked an idea, and I was like, gosh, what do we hate doing the most as architects? We hate doing like the menial drafting and just like duplicating stuff, and it's kind of like digital paperwork. It's like, how can we get rid of that so we can spend more time doing the stuff we love on design? We reached out to some coders, and we tried to get them to write some script for us, working with some different AIs and everything like that. And we made some pretty good progress, but it wasn't. It was still what I was describing just a second ago. Like, it's still not quite there. Where we've seen it really work so far is the visualization has gotten much quicker. They be able to do these super high end renderings and iterations has been phenomenal. Like, it's just phenomenal. Al and I, the name F9 actually is the hotkey on the keyboard for 3ds Max, and that's what Al and I used to use to produce these super high quality photorealistic renderings that fooled people like that it was built work. And so we used to hit the F9 button, right? And all we had when we started the firm was F9 Productions. And so, and they used to we would push that button, walk away from the computer, go to bed, wake up the next day, hopefully the rendering's done. This was even after like we would gang up computers together and have like
Yeah.
8 process. It was crazy. And now it's like an hour. It's or less.
I was
I
going to
mean,
say, if that, I got to believe it could be done way quicker than that.
yeah. Well, it's an hour to like set up the rendering and get all the materials, and then it's
Okay.
even quicker. You're right. Then it's like seconds, because then you're like, oh, I have a working model. I can just almost instantaneously do with the thing.
Yeah.
That's been huge. The biggest thing for me personally, though, well, professionally / personally, is I am using ChatGPT and Grok daily for
Mhm.
writing. For writing. The big thing that I learned in using it was, though, like, I'm like, oh, I need to train it to know me, which is kind of creepy, but it's part of the
Oh,
deal.
it's true. Yeah.
Yep. And so I've taken a lot of my like interviews like this podcast, other podcasts that just Al and I have done, and then I have my own written bios and all this other stuff. And I took the podcast and like transcribed them so it could read. And I've trained it and trained it and trained it and trained it. I've trained it to like our previous writing styles on the blogs that on our website and stuff like that, and projects and all kinds of stuff. And now I have like these little chat bots that perform specific things to me, where I only have to feed in a little bit of data or just a question, and it'll spit out, and it's like I don't barely have to make any tweaks. And the most precise example I can give you at the end here is we just went for a special status in Denver. I'm a Native American, and so we get these special statuses for like set aside work. So we're going after a special status, and there's so much paperwork involved, you can imagine. I'm writing all these narratives and everything. It knew me so well. I was able to complete the application in like an hour or two. And one of my good friends who also went after this status. Her name is Rebecca. She was just giving me nightmares leading up to us applying for it. And like, oh my God, it took me forever. It took me like months and whatever. And told her how long it took. And she's like, she almost slapped me. I was like, well, that's where we're at.
It's amazing and
Yeah.
how much it can help. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about green building. You know, how is it required where you are to include certain, you know, stuff to make sure it's so, you know, you add up, you know, points or percentages of the build,
sure.
that kind of stuff. Tell me about out there in Colorado.
Yeah, Cali, you almost did it, which would have been perfect because we are Colorado at this point. Yeah,
Close. You're close.
We are mini California. In some ways, we're even worse, honestly.
Yeah.
Worse by draconian rules. So by default.
Well, you know what tipped me off, by the way, it made me think of California, was when you started going through timelines, you're like, well, it takes a year to plan and a year to build. And I was like, holy cow, I wonder what they're building and designing. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're so right. It is. It's a more onerous. It's quicker out there apparently compared to here. I get a lot of clients that come in and they'll think we have to throw we have to greenwash the project, or that we have to throw all of this technology at the problem to solve it. Which is like all we're trying to solve is, regardless of the global warming and all the other, it's like, we just want efficiency. Like at the end of the day, people want efficiency. They want a house or a building that is cost effective to heat and cool and all the other good stuff. It's comfortable. It doesn't kill you with like toxins. And so they come in and they say like, what about solar panels and triple pane windows and just exotic building materials, the way I would describe it in technologies. And I go, well, we actually solve 90% of the problem if we can just orient the house or the building correctly, especially if it's a new build. And they go, really? And I go, yeah. And then I draw them a little diagram. I'm like, well, we're in the northern hemisphere. If we can make it a long east-west kind of shaped building, and then we're, putting very few windows and openings on the north side and selective ones on the east and west, and then really embracing that winter sun and trying to block it in the winter on the south side or in the summer, we're good. And they go, really? And I go, yeah. That last 5 to 10%, I go, that's where we start to talk about specialty insulation and cladding and windows and solar panels and all the other good stuff. So there's sort of that point to talk about. And then I also talk about the codes, and I go, look, everything you're describing is actually just default in the building codes now. And they go, really? I'm like, yeah. Like these aren't high performance windows. They're actually just regular at this point, and everybody's kind of on board with all of that. But the bad sort of rug that I'm about to pull out here is Colorado, who is controlled by a certain one party, right? And at this point, like, it didn't used to be that way. For a while it was purple. It was so awesome. I was like, oh, cool. Everybody gets a voice. Now it's just there's a big energy mandate that's coming out in the fall that will be draconian by nature. It just can't be. And it's going to have all of these very top-down rules that affect places. The metro areas are going to survive just fine because they're already expensive to live in. People expect it. The salaries are higher. But what it's going to kill is it's going to kill the people in the suburban and then the rural areas, which those people matter. Like that's actually over half the state's population still. We only have, one major city and then a couple college towns, Boulder, Fort Collins. Yeah. So that's where it's at. I mean, I've designed and built 2 houses for myself, one for my family, wife and 4 kids, and then now one in the condo that I live in. And the big house that we built, we solved all those problems. Like I said, 90% of it was solved, and we didn't have to do anything special. It was kind of like it was a beautiful modern house and everything like that. So I'm all about efficiency, but I'm not here to think that we're going to like save the planet when you have people like countries like China and India to like coal plant a day. It's like, come on. We're sort of like, I fear that we're going to self-impose a hardship that is on the American people. It's not necessary.
Not that this is a little off topic. I'm just curious to get your take again on affordability. That's a big problem across the country. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the subject and how big of an issue it is where you are.
Massive. It's just so massive.
I
It's
feel
just
like
so
that's
massive.
I've heard that about out there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. We have there's two different A words that get thrown around a lot. One is affordable housing, and the other is the one that doesn't get thrown around enough, and it is called attainable housing.
mm,
There's a big missing middle happening right now. High end, there's always going to be high end. There's always going to be people with a lot of money who want to do the coolest buildings ever, and we're happy to have them. The government is actually doing a decent job with affordable housing here. They've implemented some rules and measures that make it so if you're a developer, for instance, in the town that we work in, if you do 10 units or over, then 12% of them have to be set aside for affordable housing, right? So then and affordable meaning like people 50% or below the median income. So we're talking like the lower middle class, and that's
mhm,
why it's like lower middle class. That's why the middle is missing,
mhm,
and there's not enough focus or help on that. All these politicians say over and over again, every single cycle in my city council and the adjacent ones and the ones beyond, it's the same stuff. It's the same things. We want to make we want affordable and attainable housing, and they say it over and over again. And every single time I press them, they go, and I go, how are you going to do that? Like, how are you going to do that? I go, hey, I'm a developer. I'm a builder. I'm an architect. I'm one of the guys that you should be talking to. You should get all of us in a room, and you should get the people making the rules enforcing the rules in the room. Zoning, the planners, the building department. That's a fire department. We need to get all of us in a room, and we have to agree we're not telling lies in that room. And the politicians, like you guys, can mediate between us, but you need to see the problems here. And then what their answer always is they go, oh, increase density. They just keep saying this
yeah,
increased density. That's their default. They're like robots. And what I find is a guy who's practicing all of this stuff in the field is, for example, we took a project that absolutely every city council person, left, right, or center, loves this idea. We have all this commercial space in America, too much commercial space, especially with more people working from home. They go, why aren't we taking these commercial buildings and converting them into residential?
it's
We just
expensive.
did. Oh my God. Not only that, exactly. This is exactly where I'm going with it, Frank. Not only expensive, but like, wow, you guys couldn't cut red tape so we can do this project that you guys want. Like you guys want to talk about this to your other city council people. You go to these conferences, like, oh, look at what we're doing in our town. Look at us. We're so great. We took a 3-story building. We left commercial on the first floor. We converted the top two to attainable units. It's one of the biggest nightmares projects of my entire life, and it's not because the architect screwed up. It's not because I'm the architect. It's not because this is the builder. It's not because of the developer. It's because we cannot get the city to get out of its own way.
Mhm.
So they treated it as a new building and threw all of these codes at us, which can't apply. Like they physically can't. And I'm a big believer in like you can get anything done.
Sure.
Anything's possible. God is infinite and all this other stuff. Nope, not in this case. There's been instance after instance after instance after instance. So the city council is saying all of these things. They're talking out of this side of their mouth. And at the same time, they never talk to the people, almost never, who enforce the rules that they made up and the ideas that they're implementing. So the left hand can't talk to the right hand. I think that's the biggest problem, right? Because like we can solve those problems, especially at a local level.
Sure.
We all know we can't like tell Jerome Powell tomorrow, even though I tell him all the time on the podcast, Jay Jerome, please drop those rates.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, they get in their own way and they cause their own problems. And that's a big part of what everybody's dealing with, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not that we're trying to cut corners.
No.
We are looking for flexibility. We need these local governments to be malleable and flexible and responsive. It's not about cutting corners or making buildings unsafe. It's about doing those three things.
It's interesting. Um I said I was thinking I was gonna ask no more questions and go straight to fishing before we finish up, but I do have one more question I want to ask.
Yeah.
And I know this isn't what you do, but these questions I think are important, especially for people who are listening and are in the industry or tied to the industry.
Yeah.
We do have an interesting thing happening where there's now 3D printing of homes. And I think in the future here, we've got rates and the market is changing right now. As we speak today on this podcast, I think UPS laid off 20,000 people yesterday. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's correct. I'm just curious your thoughts on the building industry through the rest of the year. And if you have any thoughts on that, and if you don't, that's fine. But I just was wondering what your thoughts are on the industry as a whole right now. Curious to know.
It's going to be just like the market, choppy.
Yeah.
Sky was falling a month ago. I bought the dip.
Yeah.
And now I'm real happy, And so it's up and down, up and down, up and down. And people are holding on by a thread right now. That's the thing about it is like we're all at the edge because if the liquid is frozen like it was in 2000 after the crash in 2008, I'm not saying we're there, but there's definitely echoes. That's the way I've been describing it to everybody is like we're echoing the Great Recession, and they go like, yeah, but there's no housing bubble. And I go, yeah, you're kind of right in that way. Like the Fed did thread this needle perfectly. I mean, I've had to eat crow about it multiple times in public on my show. I'm like, fine, the Federal Reserve, because I'm not a Keynesian at all. I'm very much a Lockean and very much like a Misesian economic school, Chicagoan. And I'm like, oh, I guess they actually printed all that money during COVID, doubled the money supply, and they literally threaded it perfectly. I am just shocked. So if the tariff negotiations even out and China ends up playing ball like the UK just did, hopefully India does if they can finish this little squabble with Pakistan, I think we'll be okay. Because again, it points back to like we have this huge housing demand. People want to work. We're still the richest country in the world. People are coming here because they obviously, right? Because of all those reasons. So I'm optimistic long term, and I am cautious short term.
I think we're both in the same place, which I think is the right way to be. Okay, cool. Fishing. What are you fishing? I mean, it's got to be freshwater up there, so that's what you're fishing, right? Rivers, streams, like that kind of stuff. You're not, or do you do all kinds of fishing and you travel when you're doing these fishing? Your show?
I would say 90% of it is local to Colorado. Yeah. Okay. But like we just got back from my big fishing trip where we went up to North Dakota, where I grew up, to chase these 100-pound freshwater fish. They're like they're called paddlefish, spoonbill catfish or whatever. You snag them. It's pretty incredible. You can only fish them for like 2 weeks out of the whole year.
That's cool.
Yeah. But the 90% of the content, I previewed this earlier. My 2020 hit, there was COVID, I was burnt out, couldn't go anywhere, wife didn't want to go anywhere. Then my kids all turned teenagers too at the same time. And I went, oh my God, you guys actually don't want anything to do with us. Wow. You guys wanted everything to do with us for a long time. And now they want nothing. Nothing. They don't even want to go to like do fun stuff anymore. I was like, fine. Now, and I finally had like comfortable money, and I was like, oh yeah, I moved to Colorado so I could incessantly fish. I forgot. Well, now I don't.
Oh yeah, I do have things I like that I don't put the kids first. Oh yeah.
yeah. And the businesses were established, so I was like, and again, no traveling and all that. So I rekindled my passion, which was from childhood fishing and growing up in the outdoors. And then in Montana and Idaho and all those places. And I became obsessed. I became re-obsessed with alpine fishing specifically. So I go on these hikes that are between, at the lower end, maybe 5-6 miles round trip to as much as 20 miles, usually in one day. And I have an elevation gain. Typically, I start at like 9,000 feet and end up at 12,000 above the air. They're very intense, but they're insanely rewarding because I never see anybody else at these lakes. I have them all to myself. They're freshwater, but they look like the ocean. You can see 20, 30 feet into the water. And I'm typically chasing Colorado cutthroat trout or brook trout. So I was doing this like Saturday, Sunday. Then I was starting to take off Wednesdays from work. And I got done with the first sort of season. I didn't film it, but I fished almost every single lake in the Indian Peaks Wilderness, James Peak Wilderness, and Rocky Mountain National Park. It's a huge area. And I was like, finally one day I was like, I want to make sure I can share my adventures should be shared with people. Like a lot of people never ever go that high. They'll never go that deep. So I started filming. And it's been awesome. Started filming and sure enough, like I think we're up to like 3,500 subscribers on YouTube. I've met so many people that have become like some of my best friends. They'll DM me on Insta and I'll be like, sure, there's always room for a fishing buddy. And they're usually very good people, like there's just something about the outdoor crowd that's like, you're pretty trustworthy dude or gal or whatever. So yeah.
That sounds amazing. I've never been a big fisherman, deep sea fishing, because I've always been on the coast when I did it. But I love hunting. And that sounds amazing. Like the hiking. Now, do you keep the fish when you catch them? Are you cooking them out there? No. Are you throwing them back? What are you doing?
All of the above. And one of my favorite things to do is to do the catch and cooks right on the shore.
That's
at that high. Yeah.
That's the best.
It is. And it blows people's minds. So I read a book. I did that for started doing that in 2020 or whatever. And one day my business partner pissed me off. Like, I think it was last year. I'd come down from one of these hikes and I was kind of like braggadocious about it. I'm like, dude, I'm beating 25, 30-year-olds. Like, there isn't anybody who can beat me up the mountain. He goes, Cameron Haynes can. I'm like, screw Cameron Haynes. So then I had this chip on my shoulder about Cameron Haynes for like a year. It was goofy.
Yeah.
But I read this book. Then I read
know
this
what book you're going to say. I know it. I can't think of the title. Is it about the guy who was not a hunter and goes on that trip and it's doing a challenging thing, a misogi, I think it's called?
You're nailing it. Comfort Crisis.
What's the name of it?
Comfort Crisis.
Yes, the Comfort Crisis.
Yep. So I read that book, and I only read that book 2 months ago. When I was on one of the most extreme hikes I'd done so far. It was like, again, I think a 12-mile round trip or something, and it was in the dead of winter, snowshoeing, 50-pound pack on. It was exactly what this guy is describing. And I get about halfway through the book, and I go, I could have wrote this book. Like, and then I got even more mad at Al, so I get back down the mountain, and I go out to Al, and I'm like, hey, did you finish the book? And he goes, yep. And I go, who do you think needed to read that book more, me or you? And he goes, me. And I go, there you go. Now quit. I go, Cameron Haynes finishes where I start, just so you know. Because he does. It's like, he starts at 7, he goes to 9. I'm like, I start at 9, bro. I go above the tree line. So where I'm going with this is, I go, guess what? You're invited to, Al. You're invited to Camp Uncomfortable. And guess who's hosting? Me. So this summer, I started last summer was kind of like a dry run of it, because I had a buddy who came down, and we did exactly that. Like, we rented a side-by-side, went on this 4x4 trail to the trailhead. So we're already like 8 miles deep just to get to the trailhead. And then after that is the 10-mile hike or whatever. And so I invited all my buddies, made a little graphic and everything. And this August, I'm going to host Camp Uncomfortable. And it's like, to get the guys out there and go, get off your butt. You're middle-aged. It's time to make sure you stay in shape for a long life and career. And this is what it's all about. It's all that stuff in the book. So
yep. I love it, man. I'm all about that stuff. So super cool. I like the name, Camp Uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
I like it. Well, it's been good conversation today. Where can people find you? Where would you want them to find you if they're looking for you?
Yeah, go to LinkedIn. I'll link him with anybody. I'll link him with you right after this, Frank. I try to do that. First name Lance, Lance. Last name Cayko, Cayko. I'm the only one who's on there. I will link him with anybody. You can go to InsideTheFirmPodcast.com. Check us out there. Subscribe. And then F9Productions.com. We have a newsletter we send out every month. So if you sign up there, you can check out everything we're doing. Reach out.
Cool. Love it. All right, man. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in again. And we'll put everything in the show notes. Lance, it's been great. And hopefully we'll do it again sometime in the future.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Stay in
All right,
touch.
man. Take care, everybody.